Canada's very own Prince of Prog Heavy Devi is showing no signs whatsoever of slowing down, and he's back again for a straightforward slice of some of the rawest, most accessible music he's ever put out. But is this just another all too familiar item on his musical conveyor belt, or is there more to PowerNerd than there first appears? Guys, gals, and non-binary pals, my name is Ian. This is Rhyme Signatures, and we're once again opening the lid on the best new releases in prog rock and metal. Right, let's make something really clear right off the bat. I love Devin Townsend. If you were to ask me on pain of death who my favourite living musician is, then Devi is 9 times out of 10 gonna be my answer. A man for all seasons, Mr. Townsend is responsible for some of my favourite metal albums of all time in the form of Strapping Young Lad's City, Ziltoid the Omniscient, and the Devin Townsend Project's Deconstruction, so to say that his pedigree is top tier is going to be putting it very mildly. I'm not going to lie to anyone though, his recent output has been somewhat hit and miss for me. 2019's Empath was absolutely superb, sure, but it's surrounded by mid-tier stuff like Transcendence, weird ambient art pieces like The Puzzle and Snuggles, and the honestly quite forgettable 2021 output of Lightwork. So in truth, I feel like Dev's been in a bit of a creative rut lately, not really feeling sure as if he's 100% certain where he's taking his career, given that we're getting equal amounts of high concept weirdness that either works or doesn't work, or we're getting overly safe, melodic driven, easy listening rock music. As such, I approached PowerNerd with a degree of caution. The pre-release spiel wasn't filling me with confidence that we were getting a classic record for the ages here, but it also tempered my expectations to a particular degree. So now that it's here, we have to ask ourselves, is this worth a listen, or should you park your keister whilst you wait impatiently for the moth to come out? Right, above anything else, this record is fun with a capital F. We are immediately thrust into the bombastic title track with very little wind-up time, and Dev is making it quite clear that this album is not presenting itself as complicated, but it is the kind of party-rocking vibes that might be associated with frat parties, mosh pit-fueled festivals, and drinking beer all night while people throw themselves around the room in a melodic-driven frenzy. And it certainly works in that regard. Songs like the title track, Knuckle Dragger, Jainism, and Goodbye certainly carry that kind of immediately accessible appeal. It's music you can put on at any time for anyone, and you're likely to get a reasonably positive reception from it. The riffs are big, the melodies and the hooks are catchy and engaging, and the vibe is certainly one of accessibility over anything else. I am personally a bigger fan of the slower pieces though, the introspective songs that see Townsend reaching out to our more sensitive side. Falling Apart, Gratitude, Younger Lover, Glacier, and Ubelia all carry a more emotional weight to them, all feeling like signature Townsend pieces that carry a lot in common with songs like Life from Ocean Machine, ER from Addicted, or Where We Belong off Epicloud. It makes for an album that feels well balanced between Dev's desire to make music to blast your face off with, and music that will make you reflect on life's simpler pleasures. It does feel more skewed towards the latter rather than the former, which on an album that was always advertised as being a balls-to-the-wall, no-filter love letter to straightforward rock feels a little odd at times. I'm nitpicking here, and I will be getting into my problems with the album in due course, but I just want to take a second to briefly touch on my favourite track on the record, the 4.5 minute long closing track of Ruby Quaker, which embodies the madness of Heavy Devi like nothing else on here. Presenting itself as a simple little country boy ballad about his love of coffee, it has the most grin-inducing chorus and infectious melodies, and then segues into Townsend's inner insanities with heaviness that hasn't been seen from him since Deconstruction. It's an absolute riot of a song, almost guaranteed to put a huge grin on all but the sourest of Townsend deniers, and in a lot of ways embodies what I wish the whole album sounded like, As for as much fun as I have honestly been having with this album, it is altogether quite a shallow experience at the end of the day. Okay, so on rare occasions I have more negatives than positive to say in my reviews, and it pains me to bring this cross to bear against one of my favourite artists of all time. But the honest truth for me is this: PowerNerd is a fine album, but that's all it is. This is a modern Devin Townsend record. If you're even vaguely familiar with his work, literally nothing on this album will surprise you. The entire vibe, the whole energy of the record, it feels like it's bits and pieces of previous albums all chopped up together and served up with a new face painted onto it. It's Epic Cloud, it's Addicted, it's Sky Blue, it's Transcendence, it's Lightwork. It's all of these pieces that he's put out within the last 15 years or so, but without expanding or innovating on any of it. All of the songs here sound eerily familiar, some of them even verging on self-plagiarism. Listen to Glacier and then listen to Before We Die off Sky Blue and tell me you don't hear that. It's like a slowed down version with a near identical melody to the point where I was convinced this song was just a reworked version of it. And I think that's what I found frustrating about PowerNerd. I get that it's supposed to be a quick fire album, less thinking, less planning, more guitar, more riffs, etc, etc. But I don't think that's really a viable excuse for laziness, because at times that's what it feels like. This feels like it was written as a quick-fire summary of his recent sound just to fill space, all wrapped up and put into a single place without any of the trademark differentials and personality that I've come to expect from his work. Just look at the initial run of the 4 Devin Townsend Project albums of Chi, Addicted, Ghost and Deconstruction. All very distinct, all very deliberate and different in style, mood, texture and approach, but yet all still so distinctly Devy. Now I can describe each of those albums in an individual manner and how they stand out in his discography, but I feel I simply can't do that with PowerNerd. It's a standard issue rock album for better or worse, but for me I feel this is to a detriment. The album feels like a homogeneous soup of ideas where nothing save for the final track of Ruby Quaker genuinely stands out and makes me think that it's worth listening to again. I mean, sure, there's still some fun ideas here. The moment-to-moment experience of the album is genuinely enjoyable, and I think this is a great album to just enjoy piecemeal, with tracks taken out of context and enjoyed in isolation. Knuckle Dragger is heaps of fun, Gratitude is inspiring and beautiful, and I've already told you how much I love Ruby Quaker, but taken as an album, then PowerNerd feels more like a pit stop on the way to something much more interesting and exciting, rather than a locale making an extended trip towards it worthwhile. So, what else can I possibly say about Devin Townsend's PowerNerd? Look, I'm willing to accept the fact that some of you will be upset with me about this review, that some of you will be telling me about how my opinion is incorrect, etc, etc. But I've come down to a realization while scripting this. If I love you, I will be hard on you, because I know you're capable of so much more than this, and that's exactly how I feel about Devi right now. No, I'm not expecting every single album he puts out to be a stone-cold classic that will last the test of time for centuries from now. Of course not, that would be a ridiculous expectation. But given that Dev's recent output has been on the mid-tier for me for far more of his albums than I'm comfortable with, I'm at the point now where I think some tough love might very well be required. I'm well aware that Dev probably won't watch this, and if he does, I sincerely hope he doesn't send Blataria around to my house to beat my ass. But I promise you my criticism is coming from the right place. I know he's got some of that off-the-wall craziness still knocking around that incredible brain of his, and I'm hoping that this minor bump in the road is the last setback before whatever the hell the moth ends up being. Now don't get me wrong, I've still enjoyed my time with PowerNerd. It's still a fun time, it's just not a memorable time. The songs come and they go, and while in the moment I'm enjoying myself, once it's finished I find myself with very little desire to go back and dig any deeper from the surface level enjoyment that the album provides. I feel this is still a record absolutely worth streaming, and I've enjoyed it a lot more than Lightwork. And I think if I was going to slap an out of 10 number to this, it'll probably be like a strong 6, light 7, something like that. But as always with these reviews, your mileage will of course vary. I think I'm about ready to park myself somewhere though and just wait for the moth, as ultimately in Devi I do still trust, especially when it comes to the weird and the wonderful. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, so if you loved or if you hated this one, please talk to me about your experience of the album in the comments down below. Please do drop me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Please do consider subscribing to the channel, guys, and of course, as always, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.